Love, love, love till I hear the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine, your host, and our guest is Colin Perry. Welcome, Colin.
Thanks, Geraldine.
Great to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I hear you have a great story and have written a book on a near-death experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
I suppose so that people have a bit of a context. What was life before in a sense of your faith journey? Because I knew it was a spiritual experience.
Well, I was brought up a Christian, so as a child it was very much all I knew was to believe in God and to regularly attend church. So it was never a point at which I had a sudden flash conversion like a road to Damascus or anything like that. It was very much something I always knew. But there was a certain point, I guess, around age 15 or 16 when I guess I really started to read into the Bible and really explore further what God was and what He meant to me, and looking up at the stars late at night and just experiencing the majesty of God and the universe. And at that point, I think it really started to impact me, the immensity and the reality of God. Yeah. And from there, it was really a case of I was growing up in the 70s. I was a musician, so I sort of wandered away from the church and wandered away from, not so much from my faith, but just wandered away from the formality of attending church, and started to concentrate heavily on music and started to encounter the drug culture of the day. And
Were you a soloist or composed music? Or?
A number of different things. I was a guitarist and songwriter, and I also was a sound engineer, a roadie. So I used to go on tour with bands, particularly around the age of 20. I was doing quite a lot of work in that area, which was a challenging lifestyle for a Christian. But also a very exciting lifestyle where, I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about myself. But certainly wouldn't say it brought me closer to God, put it that way.
So you kind of became a lapsed Christian?
Almost, yeah. I still had a basic underlying faith and belief in God. That never went away. But I guess I just wasn't living the life.
Yep, and were you still going to church?
Not much. There was a point at which I did, but just for a couple of years, and very much had an encounter with the Holy Spirit at that particular time. I would have been about 20, 21, I guess. This was at a Anglican church up in Belgrave in the Dandenong Ranges, and was baptised in the Holy Spirit at that point in time, which was amazing. But I experienced some really hard things shortly after that. I was married with 2 children, and my marriage broke up, and I was, alone and divorced at age 23. So
wow, that's young.
Very young to be in that situation. So I was a little bit angry at God, feeling a little bit abandoned at that point in time. And that was probably one of the lower points of my life,
Yes. So with getting angry, did that made you search for God more, or you just went further away?
There was a period of time. I actually went on the road with the band for a good long 6-month period, I guess, and was probably the wildest time of my life, probably the least godly time of my life. But I think that brought me to a point of wanting to get back to God, of just feeling that emptiness of being away from Him. So I think effectively that helped to draw me back again. Yeah, but. Not many years after that, I had remarried, and my young daughter, beautiful 7-year-old daughter, was hit by a car and profoundly brain injured. That rocked me severely at that point in my life. So I was already a marijuana smoker, but I think that big shock in my life actually led me to a lot of self-medication. And I think I was really deeply in shock for a couple of years.
Did she stay alive, or she was
She survived for quite a number of years after that, but she was very heavily brain injured.
Oh, wow.
So she was in a situation where she was in a wheelchair. She could only really use her left arm. She couldn't speak, but she was mentally very alert. So I could still talk to her and she could signal with her hand yes or no, or, you know, she had ways of letting me know what she was feeling and
Yes.
thinking. Yeah. So yeah, it was a tough time, very, very tough
Yeah.
time at that
Yes.
point, yes.
Is she still alive? Or?
No, unfortunately,
Yeah.
she died in 2009, actually, when the swine flu came through.
Really?
She was very vulnerable and she was one of the casualties of that previous epidemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And what happened to your faith after that? Did you search or did you just go lapse again?
Look, there was a long period of time there after that accident, as I said, where I was quite in shock. And I actually, a couple of years later, just the whole music industry thing I was involved with wasn't working. We were going through the recession we had to have in the early 90s. There wasn't much work for me, and I actually went back to university and studied media, studied to do teaching in media, and was there for some years, and actually went on to do a PhD right throughout the 90s. So that whole decade for me was a decade of study, but also a decade of turmoil as some of the people I was very close to became involved in a cult up in the Dandenong Ranges. And that was very frightening. They used to involve people by drugging them without their knowledge, and that was done to me on a few occasions, which was very, very frightening experience, I can tell you. And for someone who was already smoking marijuana, it was hard to understand how out of the blue suddenly I was way beyond anything that marijuana could do to me. In fact, at one stage I didn't sleep for 4 days. I had a heart rate of 180. I was a mess at that point in time. So that was a very challenging period for me. But at that time I really came back to Jesus and said, I need your help at this point, like very strongly. So that was the point at which I really decided I needed to follow Jesus. And it's never been too bad since then. Basically, I've been following him from that point on. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Probably that's a good chance to go for a break now.
Sure.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break.
Go till I hear the breath of the Spirit blowing in me. Blow, blow, blow till I hear the breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Hello. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Colin Perry. Hello, Colin. You were talking about how you had a PhD in media, and then you had this faith story, and what happened was your daughter got sick and died, and your faith started to become. You were coming back to your faith again. So what happened after that?
Well, actually, my daughter was still alive at that particular point in time. So I was very much involved with attending church, and I had young children. I had three young children at this stage. And that marriage, unfortunately, after about 20 years of marriage, actually fell apart, which was very sad. Then I guess I was for a few years alone and feeling not distant from God, but perhaps not as close as I would like to have been to God, and feeling a little bit out on a limb and not knowing what to do with my life, and living on my own. And at this point, we're talking about around 2008 at this point, I started to notice I was getting chest pains, which was not good. So I went to see the doctor and said, what's this all about? And she actually arranged a ECG test where, you know, all the wires are attached to your chest, and you're measuring the beating of the heart to see how things are going. And she said, just you take it easy for a little while until we sort out what's happening here.
Were you in your 40s about then?
I was 49 at this point in time, and she just said, be careful. So I did, and was waiting for the results. I'd been about a week, and I was starting to feel better and thinking, there's nothing particularly wrong with me. So one particular Sunday afternoon, I decided to go out and start my whippersnipper in the garden and do a bit of weed trimming. And the machine wouldn't start, so I was struggling and pulling on the cord and then just suddenly a massive cramp hit me like a brick in the chest. It was very sudden and very extreme, and I knew immediately I was in trouble. But right as this happened, I just heard the voice, and I knew it was the voice of God, just said to me, you are going to die, but I have things for you to do.
Wow.
Very audible, a very, very strong voice that totally had my attention, even though I was in the middle of a heart attack. And I just looked up at him and said, well, which one? I'm going to die, but you have things for me to do. What's going on here? I was a little confused.
Yes.
And this voice of God just said to me very clearly, go in, pack your bag, ring the ambulance, head off to hospital. So I did that.
Wow, you must have been feeling really scared, was it?
Interestingly, it was a very calm, I don't know if you've ever been in shock, but it was that sort of
You just did
time slowed down and
Okay.
everything was very calm and still, and I was very, very logical and sensible about everything. I didn't panic because I think hearing that voice had really helped me.
Yes, you're very focused, it sounded.
Yeah. So I packed my bag and waited for the ambulance to arrive, and they came in, and the poor ambulance officer was his first day on the job. One of them,
no.
a junior, yeah. So he actually treated me while the senior one was watching on, and gave me nitroglycerol, which lowers the heart pressure, blood pressure, and a little bit of morphine to treat me.
Dilates the arteries. And
So that was good, and they then took me out to the ambulance, and we were on the way to hospital, and he said, I'm just going to give you another shot of morphine to treat you on the way, and he did that, and immediately I felt very disoriented and dizzy, and I said to him, I'm going to pass out, and I did, and I blacked out totally.
Right.
I've fainted, several times in my life, so it's nothing I'm unfamiliar with.
Yep.
But this was profoundly
Differently.
different. Profoundly different. I was totally disassociated from my body and floating, but aware and conscious and floating in a sea of darkness. There was nothing.
Okay. So
No
you could
sensation.
see yourself from above?
No, not at this point. I was just floating in blackness. There was nothing around me. So I felt very peaceful at that point in time, but it gradually occurred to me, I think I've died. It took a while for me to realise this, and as I realised that, fear started to set in, and I started to sink down into this blackness, and I was aware that there was a great abyss with no bottom beneath me, and I just felt there was something very, very bad down there, and I did not want to go that way.
Wow.
So with all my heart and strength, I just crawled out, Jesus, help me, at this point in time, because I was feeling just desperate. And I continued to float down for a little while, and then suddenly a hand came and just grasped my forearm and said, you don't want to go that way, and just started to pull me upwards very, very quickly. So I was flying up and felt this sensation of flying up extremely fast for quite some minutes, it felt like. And eventually we came to rest, and I was in a sort of a dimly lit area, quite cloudy and misty. I don't think my spiritual sight was quite established.
Yes.
But there was this beautiful being who'd come down.
Was it an angel or God?
There was a whole group of angels, but this one that just shone out, and he was the one who'd come and rescued me. So at this point I said, who are you? And he said, I'm the one you call Lord. So this was Jesus. I'd called out to Jesus, and Jesus had come to collect me. So I was there with him and a group of angelic beings around me. And I was quite overwhelmed with the experience, and being with them and being with him was like nothing I can describe. These angelic beings were beautiful but noble and wise and ancient, and you could feel this emanating out of them. It was not anything visual. I could actually feel who they were. It was a direct sensation.
That's amazing.
It was totally amazing. And then Jesus began to talk to me about my situation, and he said to me, do you want to stay with us and we can take you on into eternity, or do you want to return to your life? So he gave me a choice to make at this point in time. Right at that point in time, I need to describe what it was like being with him.
This is so exciting, but we'll have to go for a break.
A break, certainly.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break.
Go till I hear the breath of the Spirit flowing in me. Blow, blow, go till I hear the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine, your host, and our guest is Colin Perry. Welcome back, Colin.
Thanks, Geraldine.
You shared about how you actually held the hand of Jesus. That was incredible.
It was indeed, and as I've just described to you, being with the angels was magnificent and an incredible experience, but to be with Jesus himself is something I will never forget. His presence was not what you would imagine visually. He wasn't a massive glowing being by any means. He quite a normal size human form, but what I experienced with him was the sensation of love was massive, and I felt it inside myself to the point where I almost felt as if I was going to explode with it. It was so strong. It was just so strong and so beautiful and so good. And at that point, he actually came to me and said, I need to do some work on you, basically. When I say he said, there were no words that were physically spoken, but I just heard his thoughts crystal clear,
like
and I could sense he was inside me, and he actually did enter into me in some way at that point, into my soul, and I could feel him shifting things around inside me. And I mean, I had been through some hard times, as you know, and I could feel myself being restored and rebuilt from the inside at that point in time, which was quite incredible. And I was able to sense him and the scale of his awareness, which was magnificent. There are no words that can describe how I felt in that moment. I could sense that he was able to know all things and all times and all places. He was not limited by time. He was aware of all the things in the universe that were happening. And that was in itself something that I really will never forget. That to me explained all those words like omnipotent and omniscient and the big long words that he used to describe God. And to actually feel it firsthand is an amazing thing.
So your life would have been so different after that, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Never any doubt. Like there is faith. We have faith in God. For me, it stopped being faith at that point, and it just started being knowledge. I don't have any doubt whatsoever about the existence of Christ and who he is and what his status is, because he's shown me who he is and what he is and what he's capable of. As I said, at that point, he gave me this choice. Do I want to come back to earth, or do I want to stay with him? And it was, for me, a very, very difficult choice to make. In my life, I had a young son, 2 daughters, and another daughter who was in a wheelchair, and an older son. I had, children and responsibilities and things in my life that I didn't feel I could walk away from. But being with Jesus and the angels was so wonderful.
You're in heaven.
I did not want to leave. I did not want to leave that. I was so drawn to just stay with them forever. But I thought about my earthly life and what were those responsibilities that I had with my children, and I just had to say, no, I really feel I need to go back. And at this point, he just turned to one of the angels and said, go and check the vessel. By which he was referring to my body. And then I looked and I watched this angel fly down, and I could see myself lying in the ambulance. And this angel was hovering around, looking at my body, and obviously evaluating whether I was in a fit condition for my spirit to go back to my body at that point.
Wow.
And he returned and said, yes, the vessel is
It's
good.
ready.
So Jesus then said to me, all right, we'll send you back. And he then gave me a few messages and warnings and things, and showed me some events from my future life, which I probably don't have time to go into now, but he was able to actually visually show me things from the future, which
Amazing.
was quite incredible, things that have indeed taken place since then.
Wow.
So that was interesting to
What a
think that
privilege.
he's just able to look through time and warn us about what's coming and such things. So that was my experience. And he then sent me back, and I felt once again like I was swimming in water, and suddenly surfaced, and I was back in my body, and took a big breath. And the poor young ambulance officer
Must have got a shock.
he was standing there with the
Ready to-
defibrillator pads ready to go. And,
You didn't have to do that.
no, he didn't. He said, wow, you're
Jesus
back with
woke
us.
you up.
Yeah, you're back with us. And I said, yes, I am. And I said, gee, it must have taken a long time. I've been away for a long time. And
Yes.
he said, no, you've been gone for a minute.
Wow.
To me, it felt like probably 20 minutes to half an hour was the sort of time period I experienced.
Wow.
But in terms of coming back into my body, that was only a minute had passed.
Wow.
So that was very interesting in itself. Yeah.
Did you start proclaiming Jesus to everyone straight after?
I did, well, straight away start telling the ambulance officer what I had experienced, and then, you know, when people in the hospital, I was telling nurses and people like that about it. But of course, there's a level of scepticism when you start
You're saying,
saying
oh,
things
he's
like,
had a psychosis.
all right, you've had your morphine, off you
You've
go.
had your psychosis.
But no, yeah, it was a very difficult thing from then on, actually, that people do not necessarily want to believe in that.
Yes.
And that they will tend to just push it aside because it's too much to handle if they don't believe in
That's
God.
right. So in your face.
Yeah, to believe that afterlife exists is quite challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
And you've written a book about that. So, because after hearing that story, people want to know more details. And your book's called Dying to Be Alive.
Yes.
Is that right?
Absolutely. And look, I use the author name C. Thomas Perry.
Oh, C.
If anyone wants to search for it, it's available on Amazon and from Ex Libris bookstore and quite a number of bookstores, but it is available online. I go quite deeply into the story of what happened. I go quite deeply into the Bible and into scriptures, and also from that time onward, for quite some period of time, I was experiencing voices and visions for some years after that, and I write a little bit about those experiences that I've had since then. Yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. I'd like to have you back on the program to hear more about it,
Sure,
and so people can get that book, Dying to Be Alive.
Yes.
That's a great title too. Well, I'm going to wish you all the best and have you back soon.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Thank you.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us again next week. Goodbye and God bless you.